What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Rams Brothers. I'm your host, Dean, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother and the other great host of this show, Nick. And Nick, the Combine wrapped up over the weekend. A lot of really good high-level stuff coming out of the Combine. Some stuff that's directly applicable to the Rams and how they could potentially trade up, maybe, or trade back, or stay put. But first and most importantly, how are you, my good brother?
I'm good. Been rocking this NFC Conference Championship hat regularly to remind everybody the last NFC champion that won the Super Bowl. Just a little fun, just having a little fun. Things are good. The Combine was fun. I feel like we're at a peak of people caring about the Combine. Like, this is the most I've seen people talk about.
It's riveting because, players kind of opt out, right? Caleb Williams' first pick in the draft was there, but wasn't participating in any drills. And some of the stuff that comes out of it, like the Rams necessarily aren't there from a scouting perspective, but are behind the scenes and are able to meet with players. So it's a really, really interesting dynamic. This Combine continues to evolve and change into things different that they are from years prior. And it's all kind of based on the players and some of the top picks and how they're starting to dictate it, right? But I feel like what's really kind of interesting coming out of Rams world is the Rams potentially trading up. And the reason why is because they met with Rome Odunze at the Combine. They met with Taliese Fuaga from Oregon State at the Combine. And those are two players that are just high-class, high-caliber players that are going to be potentially top 10, top 12 picks. So this conversation is beginning because you look back to 2016 when they traded up. I think it was from 15 or 16 with the Tennessee Titans to draft Jared Goff. Traded up to the number one pick. They tried to do it last year. The player that they were interested in is not named. Nobody knows who it was last year that they were interested in. But when you look at this year and some of the top talent at the top part of the draft, top 10, top 12, you look at a player like Rome Odunze, Taliese Fuaga, Terrion Arnold, Brock Bowers, Jared Verse, and you're thinking to yourself, would the Rams trade up? And you look at some of these names, why would they not at least consider it and kick the tires and see what you could bring into the building?
Yeah, I do think they feel like they're in a position to make a move. They have a window that they see wide open right now. They overperformed last year. So whether it be they trade up, they trade back, they stay where they put, expect them to make a splash in their decision making. I think the least likely scenario is they stay put and they do nothing. I think either trading it away or trading up is where we will find ourselves because that's the most coveted pick they have. And I think they will be using it in either to get talent that is already, a free agent or, something like that, or they're going to find somebody higher up in the draft that they think is the move. And Rome Odunze, I think he's closest to more of a Larry Fitzgerald, which is something that we haven't seen on the Rams, even though we saw Kurt Warner throw to him. So that would be something that would just be pretty baller to bring him in. Team captain.
You could bring in. Yeah, you could bring in a Rome Odunze, but like Nick, to your point, you could trade up for the pick, and you could also bring in a top talent in terms of an unrestricted free agent edge rusher or a cornerback. Right. So you could do theoretically, you could do both. You could afford both. But Rome Odunze is the type of player, former team captain, elite size, insane dedication to his craft. You saw him at the Combine actually stay behind for his 3-cone drill. I think he wanted to clock in at a 6.6, but he just stayed time and time again because it was that second cone that he couldn't get around. It was the dedication to his craft that took everybody's attention at the Combine, how well-spoken he was, how professional he was. He ran a 4.45 40-yard dash at the Combine, a 39-inch vertical, and a 10.4 broad jump. And I think the RAS scores, those are really impressive when you combine everything. You take everything into consideration. But just when you look back at the tape, an extremely high-volume target getter on day one. And it's all because of his ball skills, the body control, the positioning, and the attention to detail that we talked about. If you look back at his 2013 season, 87 receptions for 1,500 yards and 14 total touchdowns. He's a 6'3", 212-pound senior who made Michael Penix look really good at times. He is a unanimous X-receiver that can come into the building that would be that kind of complement to Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp that can consistently stretch the field, but would still be that kind of high-volume target getter that the Rams have been looking for alongside of a DeMarcus Robinson. And, DeMarcus Robinson and Tutu Atwell being in the final years of their contract, it's time to start looking for another player in that regard. And that would be somebody that just evolves your offense to another level.
I love it when these guys in high school are, often doing other sports. And Rome was a decorated high school sprinter. So the speed is just right off the bat. So off the line of scrimmage, he can just go just straight down the field. And then he has that secret sauce of the catching, like the ball skill that most top NFL receivers have. So I wouldn't be surprised, like you said, if he's a day one. I would imagine.
He's going to be a top 10 pick. It might be a top 7 pick. We're talking
right, and it also would be the most Sean McVay and Les Snead thing to do for them to trade up and get a receiver, even though they have 2 of the best in the league. Arguably.
Well, here's a pick that might make some other Rams fans happier, because if they don't feel like wide receiver is a need immediately, and you don't feel like you need to trade away draft capital to go get one in the top 10, this other player, Taliese Fuaga from Oregon State, there was an NFC West scout. It's an unnamed NFC West scout, but we might know who it was, stated that he could be a very, very good starting caliber guard on day one and eventually a starting tackle. And he was one of the favorites during the interview process. But what I think is really interesting about that comment from the NFC West scout is Kevin Dotson's going to be a free agent. He's going to go test the market. Same with Coleman Shelton. If you can plug and play a rookie that can come in and start at guard, obviously continuity is a massive issue, and we would want to prioritize bringing back Coleman Shelton and Kevin Dotson. But this is a player that you could bring in and can immediately start at right guard if you miss Kevin Dotson. He's mean. He can uproot players with his power, his technique. He does everything right from a technique standpoint. He ran a 5.14 40-yard dash. So, from an offensive line perspective, it's pretty impressive how quickly he can get downfield. His meanness in the screen game, I think everything he does is really clean. Even in the pass game, in the open field, he doesn't get beat very often, and he's extraordinarily physical. He plays extremely mean. You heard Daniel Jeremiah just talk about within the draft process and just the overall evaluations, how it was really easy to spot him out and identify him as one of the top players. But the way that he finishes plays, he pancakes somebody and then was laying on top of them. Daniel Jeremiah was talking about after the play, which drew a flag, but just plays with a mean streak, but not in a Richie Incognito way, in a way that, you want to kind of be able to grind players down, get to the second level and win football games in the trenches. And that's what Taliese Fuaga can do for you. So great player. Might be another player that the Rams met with, somebody that they could trade up for.
He's got the hands to kind of, match the elite edge rushers, which is really important. And I think the most important thing in that, from what I saw from him, is the plug and play ability. When you lose Coleman Shelton, he's gone, and somebody that was able to be, that kind of guy. It's like, okay, we need to fill a hole here, fill a hole here. What's ever going on this week. So that's where I think he can come into factor. Also, I think I absolutely love first round. You're taking somebody to help the line, because that's not what they have done in the past. And I think Penal Sewell and like a lot of other great first round offensive linemen show that these guys usually aren't busts. If you get somebody from deeper, there's a way higher chance that it's not like quarterbacks. The first round tackles are usually the way to go.
It's funny because his player comp is Taylor Decker, and Taylor Decker at the combine was talking about working out with Greg Robinson, who was a former top 2 pick for the Los Angeles Rams. I think it was the St. Louis Rams in the same draft as Aaron Donald, I believe it was, with Jeff Fisher. And Greg Robinson was one of those can't miss prospects, like an Orlando Pace type. And he ended up being a massive miss. But he's not the example, because first round talent is something that the Rams haven't had on their offensive line. And Nick, to your point, a Penei Sewell type player would be the perfect complement to this offense. It's not going to be somebody that would immediately be able to kind of play that role immediately. But to be able to protect Matthew Stafford, prioritize the offensive line, especially if you're losing 2 starters, I think would be a way that a lot of Rams fans want to go.
Yeah. So, personally, this is probably my favorite if they are going to trade up. But Who doesn't love the flashy toys? You know.
Yeah, I like Rome Odunze. I mean, you could get Devontae Adams, AJ Green type talent in the building compared to an offensive lineman. It's flashy. It's Sean McVay's identity. Like you could see why that could potentially happen. But so is this Brock Bowers. This is a player that everybody wants to talk about. And when I just watched something with Mel Kiper where he's talking about how the Jets and Aaron Rodgers want to prioritize tight end talent. And there was another team, the Chargers, in the top end of the draft with Jim Harbaugh. Obviously saw a ton of Brock Bowers in college. Would make a ton of sense to pair Justin Herbert with that type of tight end. But this is about as prolific as they make pass-catching tight ends. Inline, 3-down tight ends, Brock Bowers. The comp is directly to George Kittle. It's a very, very rare blend in speed, strength, maturity, body control, relentlessness that it's going to drive him to be a top 10 pick. He didn't participate at the combine, but being a really, really talented route runner who has displayed time and time again that he could beat man coverage, but his even more impressive ability to exploit zone pockets is where he would excel in the Rams' offense. He doesn't have that Kyle Pitts type measurables. So he's not, 6'7" with a 55-inch wingspan, but he's got great game tape, and he has great game tape consistently. And he's a more willing run blocker than I think people give him position for, but he's always in the right position. And he's tough. And when you take into consideration Tyler Higbee being hurt to start the year, he may miss the first 4 or 5 games of the season. Hunter Long's also coming off of a major injury. Bryson Hopkins is an unrestricted free agent. Only tight end in the building is Davis Allen. So Davis Allen and Brock Bowers would be a tight end combination that I think a lot of Rams fans would sign off on. And Brock Bowers is just like one of those players that like you celebrate the pick immediately when it happens. You start looking up how much the price of the jersey is, and you see the jersey on day one in SoFi. He's that type of player.
Yeah, absolutely. Name close enough to Bowser, incredible bicep man. I was thinking the exact same thing for jersey. He's an adequate move blocker, and he'll give effort at the point of attack, but that is the area where he falls short of the Kittle comparison. However, I feel like the top end tight ends, Kittle one. I know Kittle and Travis probably go back and forth these days.
Yeah.
Travis is less so of that blocker. And let's be real, Higbee really hasn't been that for us for quite some time either. Sorry.
I think Higbee does more in the blocking game than people than he gets credit for, but I feel like he does less in the pass game year over year over year, like more drops, more inconsistencies with his route running. But as an inline blocker, I feel like he's the only player that Sean McVay really trusts.
Yeah. I just feel like none of our tight ends really have been able to bring that for a minute. But however, I will say, because the bar has been so low, it will be something that you wouldn't notice initially, just because that's kind of where we've been. But also just to bring in a tight end that's like a true weapon under Sean McVay, I think has really been yet to be seen, honestly.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. That's why this would be another really fun, splashy trade up. And a player that you'd probably get more excited of over an offensive lineman, but does the same type of things. He would be probably a starter immediately, would be on the field immediately, compared to somebody that may not be there immediately. So I don't know. I would love the pick. Another guy that I really, really like, Terrion Arnold. We talked about Kool-Aid McKinstry just because we weren't necessarily talking about trading up, but this is a player that I couldn't believe how well spoken he was. Like he just stole the show every single time he was on the camera. He has that infectious Puka Nacua type smile. Like the maturity, I don't think anybody really gave him credit for until he interviewed at the combine, but he had this unbelievably heartfelt message to his mom. And just, going back to Tallahassee and being able to make it out of that and just how difficult it is. And just everybody that it seems like is in his corner is very, very supportive, and it's going to carry him to the top. He ran a 4.5 40-yard dash, 37 vertical, 10.9 on the broad jump. He's a ridiculously fluent athlete. Very, very rarely, I feel like where I watch players and I feel like their hips just glide. Like it's so insanely effortless with him, the way that he was able to kind of backpedal and collect himself and glide his hips and transition directions. Shows that he's a pure man corner with tons and tons of aggression, but he can match up with any receiver in any position, inside, outside, in the slot. He's really, really great at taking on angles and taking away receivers as leverage. And only being a one-year starter, this is me talking him up just in one single year. 12 pass breakups, 5 interceptions in 1 year. As a starter, 6 foot, 189. He is definitely warranted to be a top 15 pick. So he might be one of those players that you think to yourself, I could trade up 4 or 5 spots to go get the guy that we really want. I just don't know if that player is going to be a defensive player, knowing who our head coach is.
But doesn't it feel like that's who it should be?
Yeah,
like isn't that the biggest
problem with
hole?
this team? Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember last year when we were building the draft board and we had all these edge rushers and corners at the top of the draft board, and they went offensive guard. They stayed put. So they're they can be confusing, but it was the best pick possible in Steve Avila. He didn't even miss a single snap. Like, it was a perfect draft pick.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I loved it. The thing with Arnold, great name, possesses average size, but he plays with that kind of aggression and competitiveness in both phases of his job, and also I kind of think that how the CBs have been, they've been kind of shrinking. It's not like this is brand new to bring in somebody that's not just an absolute DK Metcalf kind of guy, but
sure,
it is something that is a little slightly concerning if you're going to take him trade up to get to 14. So you can snag him.
He looks like somebody that's bigger than he actually is. Like 6 foot, 6'1". He's like on the verge of 6'2", 189. Looks like he can get probably closer to 200, 205. So he'll probably fill out, look similar to Jalen Ramsey type when he gets a little bit bigger and stronger. But Jalen's kind of an exception as well, just based on how big and strong he is. And then the other guy that we want to talk about that they could potentially trade up for, Jared Verse. This is a player that it's a player comparison. Danielle Hunter, we talked about him in free agency. If you don't go get Brian Burns, you don't go get Josh Allen, you get Danielle Hunter. But this is a direct comparison if you miss out on that. He's a high effort player, relentlessly pursues the quarterback, had 50 plus pressures, more pressures than I could actually count in 2023. It was roughly 6 to 8 per game, but he just wreaked havoc. And he can't be left in one-on-one opportunities. And, when you watch a player, some of the highlights as they stand out, if they're jumping off of your screen, that's one thing. But if they're driving offensive tackles into the quarterback and tackling 2 players at once, it's reminiscent of what Aaron Donald did at Pitt. Like when you entirely blow up any intention of a play even starting, those are the kind of players, just the players that just wreak havoc immediately right off the line of scrimmage. That's who I want, a Jared Verse type player, a Danielle Hunter type player. He's also really, really great as a run defender, plays with unbelievable leverage. And he's one of those promising prospects that transferred from Albany to the FBS level and just didn't miss a beat. Like he was just has the size, kind of like that Byron Young type methodology where, didn't, start off on a great foot in college and then eventually transferred over to the FBS and excelled in a year and got drafted where he needed to go and had a great rookie year. But this is a player that's a much better prospect than Byron Young ever was, and would be a really nice compliment.
I don't think they're going to go out and get like immediate edge help, even though I think that's what they should get. But this would be, this and Bauer are both would be like slam dunks in my opinion. Bring an immediate edge help. He's starting. I love it when a guy is at a school and they do great there, but then they're worried immediately about their career and then they go to somewhere else and then they thrive there too, maybe even more so. So, Verse, just another great last name. I feel like we're kind of on top of him with these guys' last names, and then
it's a really
get any of them, and I'll know all about these guys. I'll be like, oh yeah, he's on the Seahawks now.
Really fun draft. I think the 2 guys that I would prioritize are Odunze and then Fuaga, but Bowers would be just as fun, and then so would Verse and Arnold. But it's just I think they would go offense over defense if they're going to trade up.
Yeah,
just my opinion.
I'm happy that you threw that. We have discussed the defensive guys because that's I feel like what a lot of the fans are going to be wanting. But who are we kidding?
You just never know. Yeah, you have no. You really never know. And then the stick and pick options. these are guys that we've talked about already. So Amaris Mims, Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, Latu, McKinstry, Kool-Aid, Powers Johnson. These are guys that we've already mentioned. Obviously, Cooper DeJean, another guy that didn't participate at the combine, but we absolutely loved him. An immediate prospect that we felt like could come in and contribute on day one for the Rams. And will be a guy that's probably falling a little bit down in the combine because he didn't run a 4.29 like Nate Wiggins. He didn't run a 4.33 like Quinyon Mitchell. Like you might even see a guy like Quinyon Mitchell get drafted before him, just because of how well he ran at a 4.33. And some of his measurables were great. Some of his cone drills were great. Just the agility and some of the one-on-one ability that he displays is really impressive. And same kind of deal with Jackson Powers Johnson. These are all guys that it probably works in the Rams' advantage that some of these top players tested and some of these other players kind of sat back. I think Jackson Powers Johnson participated in a few drills. But I still feel like you can sit comfortably at 19 if you need to. But I think that there's so many flashy players at the top end of this draft, and the Rams haven't had the opportunity to invest just a little capital to be able to move up 8-9 picks. They might just get greedy and say, let's go do it. But if you sit at 19, you're going to find 5-6 players: Cooper DeJean, Jackson Powers Johnson, Quinyon Mitchell, Marius Mims maybe, and even Layatu Latu from UCLA, who we've talked a lot about, might still be floating around there. So those could all be potential options for players to just, sit there and wait.
What do you think they'll do as a Rams expert?
I think they're going to trade up.
Yeah.
I mean, if they fell in love with Rome Odunze, I wouldn't be surprised if they went ahead and did that. But I think that if they made that trade up, it's for one specific player. They're not going to trade into, pick number 8 and hope that they can get maybe Bowers or maybe Rome Odunze. Like they're going to go up and they're going to get their guy. I think it's time. I think it's time that they did it. It seems like the plan is going, ahead of the timeline, right? It's like you thought maybe this year they would still be able to kind of get back to where they needed to be, maybe the second round of the playoffs, maybe the NFC Championship. But it feels like this year, if they add the necessary pieces, especially on defense, they can go back to the Super Bowl. So I think you kind of got to go back all in again with some of your players aging.
And they're still the 49ers. They're still going to give us a hard time twice a year, but they just lost the Super Bowl. When was the last time we haven't seen a Super Bowl hangover outside of the Patriots? Like it doesn't happen. It just doesn't. The next following year, you played more football than everybody else except minus one team. Very difficult to continuously be great. And now you're public enemy number 1. So it's a great time.
They're gonna have a huge target on their back, the 49ers.
Yeah. For them to make a bounce right now, this is the time. Absolutely. Yeah. They overachieved last year, and now we are good enough with the men that we have in this building, plus some extra guys that we're going to bring in to be great, to make it to the NFC Championship, to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl.
Exactly. Yeah. So why? I mean, are you considering trading back in that situation? Like, because you've had so much success, like this is why this has to be on the table, because you could find another Kyron Williams, you could find another Puka Nacua in the 5th round. You can go look, later on in the draft, you can collect more draft picks. You can, look in situations where you can get rid of players and collect compensatory picks. Like they've done all of those things because they've always been kind of working on a budget. So now that they're not, it feels like, everything's kind of in play, and trading back, it has to be on the table because of all the success they've had in recent years in hitting on players in late picks.
Also, if they listen, and I know they don't listen, but if anybody in any kind of way that is involved in the Rams organization can hear me, do not waste one of your top, the first 3 rounds. Don't select a quarterback. For the love of God, this may be the best free agent quarterback market we've seen. Starters and backups. Get Garoppolo. It's like bring him in. Just an example.
I know what you're saying.
Somebody that is capable. We don't need a project right now. We don't need that under our thumb while we're trying to win a Super Bowl. It is not.
We have a project. Project is hopefully coming back from wherever he was, healthy, in Stenson
writing that
Bennett,
off.
and he come back into the building, and he's a 4th-round draft pick. He should be able to do so. But
I already wrote that off. It's just gone. But
yeah, I understand. Well, that's
regardless,
why you're saying within the first 3 rounds. So maybe, you look to trade back, and maybe if you go Odunze and Michael Penix is floating around in the 3rd, 4th round, would you be so against that?
no. I mean, because then it starts to get it becomes more of a who's who really than like
Sure.
people are going to be starting on the team and make it. So
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. A couple other guys I just wanted to touch on before we wrap up, because the trade back situation definitely could present itself. And there are guys like Xavier Worthy, who Les Snead was talking about. His wife actually tweeted about how Les said it was the fastest player he's ever evaluated in his entire life, Xavier Worthy for the Texans. So I think Les is from the Texas area. So was probably watching him in his backyard in his hometown and could not believe how fast the kid was. So obviously commenting on that, you could trade back if you miss out on Odunze early. The Chop Robinsons of the world, the Ennis Rakeshaws, Braylon Trice, and then there's Taron Bortolini, the Paisan, the Jason Kelsey comp, who we've been talking about. This Ennis Rakeshaw player is pretty interesting. It kind of goes to the smaller type cornerbacks that we've been talking about, like just because he's highly competitive. That's why he's been flashing. He's much, much quicker on tape, and he's really, really fast, but he's quicker than he is fast. And I feel like he didn't necessarily meet people's expectations at the combine. So he may fall. He may be a candidate to trade back. Highly body control is excellent, like fluent hips, and is disruptive at the line of scrimmage. He has the experience in press man, an off man, and in zone, even though he's coming off a major knee injury in 2021. And he missed games in 2023 with a groin injury and also missed the Senior Bowl. He still has been able to show a lot of really good things on tape. So Ennis Rakeshaw is a player that the Rams met with, had 26 tackles, 3 pass breakups, 1 forced fumble, and no interceptions in his senior year. Definitely a guy to keep an eye on, but I would not be excited if they traded back and drafted him. Braylon Trice is another guy, as a team captain. He met with the Rams. Very, very well liked by Washington with his teammates and his staff. He carries a much thicker frame as an edge rusher, where I feel like a ton of his power comes from, but he occasionally catches up to him because his hips are a little bit tighter, because he is a little bit heavier. But he's controlled, and he's as present as a run defender as you can get with some of these edge rushers. We like these Washington kids. He showed up in all of the biggest games and has the ability to just be really extraordinary in terms of creating tons of pressure. He created, I think, over 70 pressures in his senior year for Washington, which is insane. Has a great first step, has counters in his arsenal. He affects both the inside and outside track when he's rushing. It's a guy that I was really impressed with as I was evaluating him, and could be a replacement for Jared Verse if you miss out on that type of player. Definitely kind of want to keep an eye on the edge rushers if they don't sign a free agent. And then this other kid, Tanner Bortolini, the center. Yeah, we got a Paisan with a mullet. I mean, you saw him and what was his name? The other kid, Cameron Crum, with the blonde hair at the combine. They were waving their mullets around. But this is the kid that offers legitimate center and guard flexibility. So when you talk about like just just fluid centers, being able to identify, run blocking schemes, and being able to get into the second level, and being that kind of athlete, I think he was the top scorer in terms of RAS scores, and everything in relation to his 40 and his broad jump and his vertical was all really impressive. He can really widen his base, and that prevents those bull rushers. You have to be able to do that as a center. All the identification you have to do at the line of scrimmage. He's known to do really well at Wisconsin, and we know that Rams like Wisconsin offensive linemen. Remember Logan Bruss, Rob Havenstein, I believe, is also from Wisconsin. And he's getting that Jason Kelsey comp because of how fundamentally sound he is in pass pro, and because he has that below average length, which Jason Kelsey was famous for. Shout out Jason Kelsey, just retired today, but that's what Andy Reid was always kind of known for, was drafting these undersized players that just played out of their minds and had hearts bigger than gold.
Yeah, that Kelsey video today was brutal to watch. Shout out to Kelsey brothers. I mean, just what a career. Also, Tanner, fun fact, is a tenor.
Yeah.
Just like me. Choir tenor.
What does that mean?
It's a type of like where your scale is as a singer.
Oh, I
The tenor.
thought you were going RAS score. He was a tenor because I think he was perfect score. All of his everything was perfect. It's a good kid.
Yeah, no, come on. Obviously, I'm talking about his vocal range, Dean. Come on.
So would you be upset if they traded back to draft a center or a defensive back who is undersized?
I no. I think they're going to do something splashy, loud. I mean, this is the first time they're hosting that Hermosa Beach draft day event. So I feel like I don't think the organization Demoff will do something like that if they're going to trade back and then
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
like
Yeah.
more realistically, they're going to go up and they're going to go out and they're going to get it's like another shiny toy. So
And if they don't,
or they
yeah.
just trade it for like somebody that's proven, which
Yeah.
will also be a shiny toy.
That would be excellent.
I think
totally.
I think a lot of people thought that a lot of people in the building thought Mike Evans could realistically come to LA.
Yeah, so they were one of the teams that were interested in Mike Evans, and that's why Rome Odunze, I think they started talking to him because, right, we were talking about like players like Xavier Leggett, and then the DeMarcus Robinson news happened, and then we were like, okay, Rome Odunze, like where does he fit into the equation? But he would be the future. He would really, really take that offense to the next level. It would be like Odell Beckham Jr., Cooper Kupp, and the evolution of the offense that Sean McVay envisioned originally in 2021, but with the new elements within the run game to where it's just not Matthew Stafford and empty taking shots downfield. I think you're thinking that it may push McVay in the direction and do that again, and you don't want to see that again.
I think there might be an internal worry of the longevity of Cooper Kupp if they're legitimately going.
I know a lot of people say that, but it's different receiver positions. Like this is an X receiver. Cooper Kupp is
Right.
an F. And he also plays the Z. Same with Puka, right? So Puka and Kupp are interchangeable. So those two positions you need players to be able to fill those roles. But like this X receiver position is unique. It's unique to Deshaun Jackson, to Brandon Cooks, to Tutu Atwell, to DeMarcus Robinson. I want Coop to stay on the field as long as possible. I don't look so great for 30. Look at all the white in my beard. I understand why people are concerned about Cooper Kupp's longevity. I totally get it. But he plays a unique role in the offense to where if you bring in more talent, you can preserve his longevity and, have that sustained success in the slot, which is just a matchup nightmare consistently.
Yeah.
So
it's good. I need a Cooper Kupp picture right here. Or send me that Jim Everett poster you got hiding in the background over there.
Yeah, you could take Jim. Take Jim. If you guys are enjoying the podcast, make sure that you ram it. Like and subscribe. The draft is a lot of fucking work. The big board's coming out, so you guys will have access to the big board. All the player cards, if you guys want them, I'll make sure to send them out to you guys. But the big board will be fun. We'll be following along for the next 2 months. Pro days come up in 2 weeks. So there's going to be more scouting information coming out on all of these players when they're working on their specific pro days at their schools. So more work from the Rams brothers. Let's do it. The season never ends. We love you guys.
Yeah, I don't want it to end. It's too fun. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Peace. Go Rams.